Hello, you're listening to Hugo Talks and another lockdown news roundup. Let's start with this story. A story which I woke up to this morning. This is not one you see every day. 3 dead, 500 hurt in scorpion attacks. Heavy storms in Egypt washed them into the streets and into people's homes. A southern province in Egypt has been lashed by heavy rain, flooding and even snow, which has left 3 people dead and more than 500 others hospitalized from scorpion stings. It says here, lightning lit up the skies as downpours, hail and thunder in the province of Aswan over the weekend forced local authorities to suspend school classes Sunday. Governor Ashraf Atiya said the storms forced scorpions from their hiding places into many houses across the province. 500 people stung, 3 dead. I mean, this ain't no ordinary scorpion either. These scorpions are called the fat-tailed scorpion, which just so happens to be one of the most dangerous scorpions in the world. These things will kill you if you don't get an antidote after you've been stung. And even then, they can create long-term effects. A swarm of scorpions in Egypt. I mean, as you know, we've talked on here before about the end of time and the end of days, biblical references coming up in the stories at the moment, which many people are seeing. Some are spooky, some not so much. And I get a lot of that kind of stuff sent to me. And this one, it ties into the book of Revelations, the beginning of Armageddon. It says the opening of the 7th seal, something about locusts coming out of a bottomless pit, with the power of scorpions and how people would be tormented for 5 months. Like the stinging of a scorpion, it says here. I mean, it doesn't tie up technically correct, but there's something there. I'm not saying that's what's happening, but it is interesting. What I find a bit odd about this story is, I mean, they must have had storms in the past in this area in Egypt. I mean, they must have had loads of rain in the past at some point. How come this hasn't happened before? Maybe it has, but I can't find any sign of it. But yeah, talking of pestilence and war, I then came across this story. I saw this one directly underneath the scorpion one, and I thought, oh dear, we've got swarms of scorpions, and now we've got people talking about war. It's all going Pete Tong. UK must be ready for war with Russia, says Armed Forces Chief. Nick Carter says Russia has become bigger threat in Eastern Europe. It says here the outgoing head of the UK's armed forces has said the military will have to be ready for war with Russia after recent tensions in Eastern Europe. He spoke amid tensions on the border between Poland and Russia's ally Belarus over refugees stranded in camps, as well as signs that Russian troops could be massing along the border with Ukraine. Now, this guy is the same guy who was talking about World War III this time last year on Sky News. You remember this? Risk of new world war is real, head of UK Armed Forces warns. General Sir Nick Carter said the global economic crisis caused by COVID-19 could also trigger new security threats, even war. Yeah, if you recall, he was going on about 2030 back in that interview and how things were going to change and how the army would be 40% robots or something like that along those lines by 2030. Again, you know, that's a year ago, and here he is again turning up in the media saying something similar. Again, is this part of the psychological attack on the UK? Bring this guy out, a military general, bring him out in the media and talk about the possibility of war? Is it another way of using fear, projecting fear onto the public, subjecting them to another slice of something to worry about? As we all know, someone who is afraid, someone who is in fear, is more susceptible to persuasion, is more easily influenced and controlled. And let's face it, all of these countries, they all seem to be following the same blueprint when it comes to passports, etc. They all seem to have the same boss. But then again, you know, if the wheels come off the bus and they start blaming each other, that's when problems may arise. In Australia, they have just brought out another gadget to spy on people, in this case to spy on you in schools. or on kids in schools. Here we see this article. Aussies lash out at a new trigger warning device for schools that sound a bothersome alarm when it detects offensive jokes and speech. It's some device that listens to conversations and makes a noise, an annoying noise, if you say something that isn't politically correct. You see, now they're training your kids like they were dogs, using high-pitched noises. It says here, the Themis, a lamp-sized device intended to moderate debate in classrooms and universities and manifest political correctness into a product, sparked widespread controversy after it was unveiled at Dubai Design Week. The Themis, named after the Greek goddess of justice and order. You notice all these tech companies, they're always naming their stuff after ancient gods or whatever. Anyhow, the gadget uses sound sensors to flag racial slurs and offensive jokes with an extremely bothersome alarm that lasts 2 minutes before switching off to allow open discussion about the subject. That's just great. Take your kids out of school. It continues. Some people drew comparisons with George Orwell's iconic dystopian social science fiction novel 1984, a cautionary tale about dangers of government censorship, mass surveillance, and the repressive regimentation of human behaviour. It says here, someone said, this world has descended into the twilight zone in recent years, said a second, while a third asked, can people no longer think for themselves? Yeah, people can think for themselves. It's just they don't want you to think for yourself, obviously. Otherwise, they wouldn't be trying to control your perception of the world through the fake stream media. And now clearly through attacking your kids with high-pitched alarm sounds when they say a word they don't want you to say. Training people like dogs. I mean, it's cruel to train dogs like that as well. So there you go. Now, if ever there was a time to think for yourself, it's now. If ever there was a time to not allow yourself to be dragged along by the undercurrent, it's now. If ever there were a time to not be afraid, to not allow fear into your hearts and be controlled by fear, it's now. So keep the faith, stay strong, and as always, thanks for listening. Come and subscribe to the tribe at hugotalks.com, a place for like-minded souls who don't follow the herd. And I'll see you later.